Amidst the intensifying Indo-Canada diplomatic standoff, Mr. Trudeau has now come out and said that Canada remains dedicated to strengthening its relationship with India. Highlighting India's growing global influence, Trudeau emphasized the extreme importance of Canada and its allies maintaining active engagement with India. This comes after External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar and the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken discussed a full range of issues during their meeting in Washington. The U.S. State Department said that these are serious allegations and showed no support for Canada. Before this, foreign ministers of Sri Lanka and Bangladesh also came out in support of India and said that Canada is becoming a safe haven for terrorists. Before we hit into the debate, let's quickly listen in to U.S. and Trudeau's statements on this matter.
So I made comments on this yesterday. I can restate them here, which is that we are obviously quite concerned about the situation in Canada. We've cooperated closely with our Canadian counterparts, and we have urged India to cooperate in that investigation, and will continue to do so. And India remains an important partner of the United States. We work with them on a number of issues, but of course, on this matter, we urge them to cooperate with the Canadian investigation.
And very quickly, what should we make of the fact that Secretary Blinken is going ahead with this meeting with the Indian counterpart, despite the allegations that Canada is making?
Oh, I think it's extremely important that all of us continue to engage constructively and seriously with the government of India. India is a growing economic power, an important geopolitical player. And as we presented with our Indo-Pacific strategy just last year, we're very serious about building closer ties with India.
All right, to talk more about this, Ambassador Deepak Vora, former diplomat, joins us on the show. Pathikrit Pine, international affairs expert, will be joining us momentarily. Irina Sukuman, editor-in-chief, The Washington Outsider, also joins us on the show to talk more about this. Ambassador Vora, I'll begin with you. I hope you can hear me, sir.
I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, sir. I like your new look, sir. But we are talking about Justin Trudeau, perhaps the only...
I think he should shave his hair and come to where I am. I'm in a beautiful, beautiful part.
The only Prime Minister, sir. Right, sir. The only Prime Minister and the government in the world, perhaps, that do not know that Hitler committed suicide some 70-odd years ago and the Nazi Party is finished. They're still honoring remnants and relics of the Nazi Party in their parliament, and they're belittling India. What do you make of this mess that Mr. Trudeau has made? And when he actually talks in this language where he says that it's very important for us to engage diplomatically and constructively, I really want to understand what exactly does this mean. Is this off a textbook, which is taught in 5th grade? Because it's not taught in India. You're taught to be serious about international affairs.
Mr. Malhotra, thank you very much. Always a pleasure to be with you, to be with our young colleague, Mr. Payne, and with Ms. Tuckerman from New York. So I mentioned I'm at the Mahabodhi International Meditation Center in Leh, and I think Trudeau should come here and try and look inwards and understand that a hypocrite today was a hypocrite yesterday and will be a hypocrite tomorrow. We may not be able to change. Let me put it across to you. After a few hard kicks to his rear, he's now stressing the extreme importance of Canada and its allies maintaining active engagement with India. Who has authorized him to speak for his allies? I'm not aware that he's the official spokesman of NATO or of G7. I've not seen any document saying, buddy, you are our spokesman. Sir, the Indo-Pacific is the most important geopolitical region in the world today in terms of commerce and security. Would Mr. Trudeau's so-called allies risk alienating India? That is the most important player in the Indian Ocean for the sake of Trudeau's ego. Canada is a large country with a small population. Ethnic gatekeeping in Canada, you know this, I don't need to talk about it. It has huge ambitions, tries to ride every Western bandwagon, punching above its waist, always talking about Canada and its allies. Canada will stand for this, Canada will stand for that. And you know that the Bangladeshi foreign minister says, buddy, you are hiding one of the chaps who slaughtered the father of our nation, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, whom, by the way, I had escorted to Dhaka many, many years ago, and said that why don't you send him to us? Because the fellow is not even a Canadian citizen. You keep extending his visa. Then Trudeau, or the Canadian government, comes out with something about human rights. So human rights becomes an issue to harbor all kinds of gangsters, criminals, narco-terrorists, and so on. And then, the Sri Lankan has said that, and sir, this I can vouch for this, because when I was posted in the United States in the mid-80s, I was in touch with the Tamil fellows, not the Tigers, but the other Tamil diaspora. And they also said to me the same thing. They said, it's great being in Canada. We can do what we feel like. The Canadians turn a blind eye as long as we don't make a mess in Canada because of political reasons. The Tamils lived in ghettos. The word went out, vote for Mr. A and not for Mr. B. And so everybody would vote for Mr. A. And then Mr. A would come and tell, oh my dear, my God, my father, my uncles, what do you want me to do? So it was the political system that they were using, exactly what the Khalistani Sikhs are doing with Mr. Trudeau. My understanding is he is insincere in all the statements he's making. He's trying to make amends, but he can't get over the fact that he's G7, that he's NATO, he's this, that, and the other. So, and by the way, was it his defense minister who said, if this is, it'll be an attack on Canada's sovereignty. I've been in diplomacy 50 years, and is he threatening me that this therefore becomes Article 5 of NATO? Where an attack on any nation's sovereignty is an attack on every other member's sovereignty? He lost his marbles because he did states to attack us, or Lithuania with a 250-strong army to attack us. What is he talking about? I think these guys are under enormous stress. If there is a vote of no confidence, so I'm told by my Canadian friends in the Canadian Parliament, he's probably going to lose. And finally, you talked about the ex-Nazi whom they honored. Didn't they know it? Canada's much vaunted intelligence system knows that we were involved, according to them, in the killing of a plumber terrorist, but they didn't know that this guy was a Nazi. And who invited him? Was it the Ukrainians who said, this is our system. When a foreign visitor comes, his embassy says, who's speaking to our parliament, says, get these 20 guys, they're important, we vet them, and then we invite. So was it the Ukrainians who said, call him? You remember what Putin had said about this Volozello fellow? He said he's a neo-Nazi. I don't know. Nobody's now telling the truth. They're trying to brush it under the carpet. The speaker has resigned. He's been made the scapegoat. So, sir, I would not take seriously anything that Mr. Trudeau says. He has lost all credibility. He is probably, and I repeat this, and Ms. Tuckerman, forgive me for saying this, he's probably the most intensely disliked international leader in the world today, as per my African friends.
Right. And only he's to blame for that. Irina?
Exactly.
Irina, there perhaps has never been a precedent like this, where the head of a government of a country like Canada has gone on the floor of the parliament and accused another country of doing something as ridiculous as he claims that India has done. There are proper channels, there are proper agencies that look into these matters. The heads of these agencies convene and they talk about the challenges and whether what the allegations are right or wrong. This clearly was an agenda-driven statement that Mr. Trudeau made, and it was an agenda to, in fact, embarrass India, which backfired on him.
I couldn't agree more. In fact, it seems to be an effort to distract from some other issue that was about to explode. And I'm not talking about the embarrassment with the speaker because this happened right before that. I think there was something else is going on that is major, that is comparable, that Trudeau simply did not want to discuss. What was he hoping to achieve? That's the question. If he's accusing India of violating national sovereignty, why isn't he breaking up relations? If they were long-standing problems, why weren't they addressed previously through bilateral discussions? If there is evidence of a murder on Canadian soil, why isn't it being presented for public scrutiny and independent verification? And why would he use such a pulpit to cause a massive scandal where he would be immediately pressured to respond to these questions, to provide evidence, to offer explanation. The result is he kills out one diplomat, and what's interesting, he does not claim that this diplomat is connected to this alleged operation. He just accuses him of being the head of Indian intelligence services, and that's the, you know, what this seems almost inadequate in response to such an allegation. So what's really going on? Why was he hoping for a scandal? I'm not entirely sure who advised him that this could help, but it doesn't sound like he made that decision alone. I think there were other interests involved. I think there were broader foreign policy interests involved. I think Canada, the fact that Canada has been supporting the issue of some of these terrorists, specifically along with China and Pakistan, speaks towards where some of the pressure on Trudeau may have been coming from in this particular instance. And I think it backfired in more than one way, because not only it brought attention to this inconsistent position with an ally. You're accusing an ally in public without any prior consultation of an assassination. That's not how normally friendly relationships work. Even if there is some mishap, you don't generally start with a public accusation. But there's now an increased scrutiny for Canada's tolerance and support for terrorists, and it's becoming, it's actually I would say, displacing this issue, because so far there's no evidence that this person has indeed been killed by Indian intelligence services, but there is plenty of evidence that there has been a tolerance for terrorists, and that this particular individual was unvetted. He came with false documents, he presented a false name, and even after all that, he was never kicked out. So the question is, why would Canadian intelligence services and its political services allow such a person to reside and to mislead the community? What can be said about Canada's allowing asylum seekers who are actually extremists to come into the country? If I had to draw a political comparison, I would have to draw the situation with Jamal Khashoggi, when there was a lot of accusations floating around, including US intelligence reports that were very vague and never presented to the public. And at the end of the day, Mr. Khashoggi arrived to the US not as an asylum seeker, but on a special visa facilitated by intelligence services. He was known to have extreme views and had very troublesome, problematic connections, any of which could have had an interest in his demise and could have participated. So we're seeing a similar situation. Someone with known extreme connections is going to have very problematic. Canada has taken all sorts of extremists aside from this particular guy, and now it's accusing, it's making very, very high-level accusations with not an iota of evidence. We have seen similar accusations ultimately fail in lawsuits around the world. So why is Trudeau adopting the same failed strategy?
Well, you're absolutely right. And Pathakrit, if it was the same agency that was checking or vetting the background of that Nazi leader who came to their parliament, and that same agency is also checking whether there's proof to all these false allegations, then of course Justin Trudeau and the Canadian government are in big trouble. But when was the last time, Pathakrit, you indulged or saw such a faux pas from a leader in Canada, a developed country? These are faux pas that usually emanate out of a country like Pakistan or Afghanistan.
Vineet, first of all, good evening, and good evening to Deepak sir and Arina. See, Deepak sir has become so popular in Canada that if he fights the next election in Canada, there is a strong chance that he actually would have a landslide against Trudeau because of the cocaine statement. And let me tell you, see, the problem with Trudeau generally is that he tries to project himself as a serious geopolitical player, but problem is nobody takes him seriously. And there's another problem. I think he's also taken for a ride at times. So if you ask me, I don't think it was just Trudeau alone doing it. Because I'm sure there are certain other elements who wanted something like this to come up just after India's G20 presidency success, and then they realized that they have done a little too much, and it will not be right now prudent for them to antagonize India anymore. So they have let Trudeau to handle it on its own. The issue is Trudeau's statement, as he made, I don't take it seriously, and I don't think anybody in India takes it seriously, because statement means nothing when on ground you haven't done anything to change the discourse. For example, when it comes to dismantling the entire separatist, secessionist cartel involving organized crime syndicates, narco syndicates that is operating in Canada and actually fomenting violence in India, what has he done, or what does he plan to do with that entire syndicate? I don't think Trudeau has a plan. And if Canada, even the opposition party, whoever is in opposition, they want to see that Canada is taken seriously, they have to do something on that aspect. I think the biggest concern for Canada, not that they are a very big player when it comes to international trade with India, but the enormity of the number of students who go to Canada, the quantum of money they generate from that is almost around 70,000 crore per year. And if the government of India starts pulling the plug, then it could have a real problem for Canada, especially because if you look at the whole of North America and the European Union as economies, as blocks, they are on the verge of recession. EU is already in recession. There are major challenges coming up on the other side as well. So I think if you look at on a larger perspective, you would, beneath, I'm sure that it's not, you asked me what was the last time there was a faux pas like this. Of course, their big brother, the Americans, actually went to Africa, Afghanistan, fought for 20 years to replace Taliban with Taliban. There is a huge faux pas they also did. And there are things like this that you would see coming more from the West time and again, because unfortunately, beneath, when it comes to the West, their whole concept of rule-based order, there's a huge difference between what they project and propagate and what they actually do in practice. I am very much sure about one thing: Canada would not have done these things if the yardstick of the West when it comes to dealing with terrorism would have been same and not the double standard they project all the time. Because for United States or the NATO, I don't think even today they don't consider the secessionist elements operating there and creating violence against India. I don't think they consider them as terrorists. They think them, oh, they're rabble rousers, oh, there is a problem. Look at the type of statements that come in. Let me tell you, I'm repeating, I said it in one of the previous programs also on NewsX. There was a very recent article by Shishir Gupta in Hindustan Times in which he quoted saying that the chief, intelligence chief of India, he didn't mention the name, but we know the name. He said that the intelligence chief of India had told the CIA director that the only reason India does not take any action against Gurpatwant Singh Pannu, who holds dual citizenship of US and Canada, is because India believes, as per the article, that he is batting for Langley, which is CIA. So we must understand that it is not just Canada. Canada is, I'm sure, I have no sympathy for Trudeau. I'm very sure he's going to lose the next election. He has reduced Canada's significance to irrelevance as a country. But the problem is, I still believe Trudeau was just a fraud. Because if you look at the statement of Antony Blinken, where he was looking for accountability from India on this issue, that was a little disturbing. I mean, here was a country which has the extraordinary rendition program under which they can go anywhere in the world to extract anybody. They had the entire Guantanamo Bay, they could keep Qasim Soleimani. And here there was something which was happening without any evidence. The fingers were being pointed on India, even when India has given thousands of pages of dossiers to both these countries to act upon what's happening over there. The strong interconnect between organized crime syndicates, the narco syndicates, and the secessionist movements. Nothing has been done. So let me tell you, I think the West must understand what they have been doing all these years in terms of having these double standards, using these leverages wherever it was convenient for them. It is going to backfire if we have to, it resonates of what Hillary Clinton talked about Canada, about Pakistan, that if you have snakes in the backyard, someday they would bite you too. This is exactly what is going to happen in many of these North American and Western European countries. We have seen what happened to France in the recent past. as we have repeated in the past also, there is no possibility of a Khalistan ever being created in India. But whether it is a Khalistan issue or on other issues, the issue of integrity and sovereignty of Canada is actually a question mark, and that of many other countries. And I strongly support what Deepak sir mentioned about Canada trying to say that it was sovereignty of Canada being, attacked or something like that. Because they were trying to create an equivalence that somewhere NATO should get involved. They don't realize what they're dealing with India. When NATO and America, we have to give this credit to the Americans. The Americans are very good in anticipation. It is not just about India as a $3.75 trillion economy today. It is about what India would be in the next one decade. So in the next one decade, a $10 trillion economy, they want to deal with that in terms of as a partner, or they want to do these things. That's a decision as a collectively the West need to take. But my problem is India is the only country which stands as a bridge between the rest and the West. I think they should not try to burn it. Canada is a classic example of what the rest of the Europe should not do when it comes to dealing with developing and emerging economies like India.
Appreciate your thoughts, and we have run out of time. I don't think Ambassador Vora is still with us. I don't see him. All right, we've run out of time. I can't see you, sir. There's something terribly wrong with your video as well. You were frozen in your first response as well. But nevertheless, we've run out of time. So thank you everyone for being a part of this conversation.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.